Awesome. Well, great. So just as a reminder, um, this meeting is being recorded. We're going to make the meetings available to the public. These are not public meetings, so there's not a public comment period, um, or that sort of interaction. But the meetings will be available to both the folks that are here online today and then made available online for later reference. So if anyone else is interested in hearing the discussion of the TAC, that will be an option. So we'll probably get started here. I'm seeing some of the members of the TAC are here. Not everybody, but I think most of those that aren't here have previously said that they weren't going to be available today. So there's that. So, purpose of our meeting here today, we're going to focus on coming back to the TAC with some changes that have been made for the prioritization metrics and given sort of a last chance review on that. And then spending some time talking a little bit about the evaluation methodology and where we're at with that um, deliverable. So, Stephen or Randy or Colin, if I'm missing something, let me know.
Sounds good to my perspective.
Great. Well, Colin, I know you took the conversation from last time and have made a few changes for our prioritization metric, and so that should be showing up now in a new map. And so I don't know if you just want to take us through that map and some of those changes that were incorporated in terms of our scoring criteria, and then we'll get
Um,
feedback from folks.
yeah, sure. I can start us off. So let me share my screen. And let's see. Are you looking at the map here? Are you looking at?
We're seeing the map.
Okay, great. Um, okay, so this map is similar to the one that we showed last time, but updated with a few of the changes from that we talked about, which include last time we had a metric that was fires in the last 10 years. And there was only a couple of kind of spots of fire. So we removed that metric. We also kind of reworked some of the weights of the metrics. So as kind of a quick reminder, the metrics are um, points of diversion, so counts of points of diversion, length of potential coho habitat, length of potential steelhead habitat, um, and Russell, which is the revised universal soil loss equation, which is an estimate of um, kind of, I guess it's mass of mass per acre per year of um, hill slope erosion, and then landslide potential. And each of these were summarized at the Cal Water subbasin level, which you can kind of see are these pink subbasins here. And so each of those metrics, in order to kind of make them comparable, were normalized. So kind of constrained from 0 to 1, and then assigned a weight, which is between 1 and 5. And so the updated weights are that Russell, the Russell score gets a 5, coho, length of coho habitat gets a 4, length of steelhead habitat gets a 3, um, landslide potential gets a 2, and points of diversion gets a 1. Um, and and then the kind of third change was updating the land cover map, which is, or land cover layer, which is related to P, which is one of the inputs to Russell, which had a um, just kind of a funny break at the county line where the particular layer we were using, um, I think Mendocino County had kind of counted forest lands in one category and Sonoma County had counted them in a different category. And so we just matched those two categories up. Um, so those are the three changes. And so what we're looking at here is the new results. And so there were some, you know, kind of subtle changes to the scoring, but overall there wasn't any large impact to the scores. So still kind of the highest basins, are up in the kind of southeastern corner here, along with a couple other high scoring ones. Um, Here I can turn on so the darkest colors are scores of about 10 or 11, and the lowest scores are scores of about 2.5. So that's kind of the range.
And just to fill in a little bit, I just also want to state that we had considered the idea of using coho rather than potential streams to identified streams, recognizing that the coverage in the watershed has been extremely limited in terms of who's actually monitoring and where they're doing monitoring. It would overwhelmingly benefit basically one subwatershed. That's the only place really where they've been detected. And so that's where we stuck with the potential based on physical features of where coho restoration could occur. So just wanted to throw that out. And then I think the other, major thing to point out is that it looks a lot better with the Mendocino data having been corrected, so that we're looking at the same thing and there's not that harsh break at the boundary line. So
Yeah, thanks for that, Jason. And yeah, so that was another thing that came up at the last tag meeting is, so these are the fish distributions are the intrinsic potential distributions, which is kind of based on stream slope and watershed size, and so it's kind of like the maximum potential um, stream length where coho or steelhead might occur, which were developed as part of the recovery planning efforts in kind of between 2000 and 2015. And so we did look at, known distribution, and CDFW does have a layer for both coho and steelhead, which are recorded observations. I think it was between 1995 and current. And basically the coho kind of known distribution is close to the mouth and down. It kind of goes up about one subbasin down from the mouth. And then there was also another distribution in the appendix of what was the report that Matt O'Connor had mentioned at the last meeting. Yeah, sorry, I don't have that right in front of me, but there was kind of one other watershed planning effort. I think that was about in the early 2000s, and there were distributions kind of shown in that, but again, pretty limited and kind of constrained close to the mouth. So, um, I guess the kind of decision is to, keep with the potential coho distribution maps and steelhead distribution maps to ensure that, we're kind of protecting all of the, or, considering all of the potential habitat.
Well, that sounds good to me. I'm wondering if Vishal, if you have any thoughts on the modeling. Um,
Yeah, hi.
Matt's not here.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go
Yep.
ahead.
Yeah, I was just looking at Anna's slides from yesterday, and I was wondering if you had seen those where she's dug out this earlier map from the Department of Conservation and points to it. So I was wondering if I know it was just from yesterday, so it'd be difficult to incorporate some of that, but it has pretty much the same work done. I think I'm sending a link to that map. Hope it works. But I was wondering if you had taken a look at that, because that work from 2002 or 2005 basically already has come up with a framework that I think Anna was pointing out that we could incorporate into the current work. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts about that. Maybe you need a little more time to go through that.
I would imagine a little more time would probably be helpful, but just looking at that map that she showed with data from 1964 to 1970, it does highlight a couple reaches in particular. And so I would be
Yeah.
interested in figuring if we want to weigh that heavily.
You
Yeah,
want
I
to
would
steal the screen here, Jason?
I would really
Yeah,
encourage looking at that, because that even has all these tables for which figure out, which roads and which sub-watersheds and so on. And although it's like some 20 years old, it's basically doing exactly the same thing, I think, that we are doing. And maybe some of you already know about it, so I don't want to presume you don't. But yeah, there was not much time for you to review the slide she sent yesterday, so maybe we can have a conversation later this week or something. I've
Yeah,
sent the
I think
links
the big
anyway.
things that stick out to me are that our current prioritization based on erosion potential and land use has a prioritization sort of in this realm. And the Fuller Creek area is not highly prioritized in our current modeling. So it would be interesting to think about if this is what we wanted to use. I know I had previously mentioned, and I don't know whether or not we've been able to actually get in contact with Anthony from the Kashaya Band of Pomo Indians, whether or not they have any sort of historic um, thoughts on fisheries in the watershed.
Yeah.
But it might just be that it comes back to something looking like this, and I think that that would be a helpful additional point.
If you don't mind going forward a couple of slides, there's this one, then the next one, please. So this is of the report that I think everybody knows, or most people know. Just go to the next one. Yeah, so there are these tables here on different habitat factors and how it's changed from the 60s to 2001 that we can build on. And then if you just fast forward a few slides to a map, I can kind of point out what. Yeah, so this is the map that I sent a link to. The next one, please. And maybe even one more. Yeah, so if you look at the top left, on the northwest of this, North Fork upstream, and then try to compare it with Collins analysis. I mean, basically, there are roads as well as stream reaches. And if they're in red, they kind of highlight which stream reaches to focus on and which roads that are in that sub-watershed to focus on. So, just going forward, it might be a good idea to spend a little time on it in the coming days. Now, I'll stop with that because I know there's a full agenda today.
Well, Colin, given our timing on this, I don't know, just what are your initial thoughts in terms of like, do we want to throw another point for some of the specific reaches that have been identified as, I mean, I think just even going back to just that one historic map that's showing really where there's some historic knowledge of Coho.
Yep.
That would be an easy tag that
Yep.
on there and give those water courses an additional bump. I don't know if we're going to be able to go into any of the like heavy data analysis of potential from these previous studies, having only been given this yesterday. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that sounds right. Like, updating the layer that we're using for the coho distribution, and the steelhead distribution, would definitely, especially like, let's say we use the map that Bishal was showing, or the Ansent, that is more constrained, down closer to the mouth. I think that's definitely going to highlight the basins that are down closer to the mouth. And I think I think there's some logic to it, I guess. Um, it, especially given that kind of the most recent coho findings were also close to the mouth. I think it's very likely that you know that
yeah, there's just
there.
that 2005 NOAA historical occurrence of coho salmon in streams, and I think we could just slap that as a layer and give some weighting to those historical occurrence water courses. Gary, your hand is up.
You're right. I had a question. Is there a measuring spot or spots along the river there that measures the sedimentation? And I had a follow-up question or statement after that.
The only thing that I know of, and I could be incorrect, is that the Gualala River Watershed Council has been doing monitoring at certain monitoring sites where they have access. My recollection is that that's primarily in the North Fork area, and they do temperature. They've had a long temperature study and some sediment. Foul wag is the channel morphology. They've done some measurements of that over time, but it's not like there's a robust in-stream monitoring network throughout the entire watershed, which um, is probably something that would be beneficial.
I guess my question then would be is all these maps and the analysis that can go into them, basically then the results after, a year down the road, whenever they're doing work to mitigate the sediment, the only real way to see a difference is to see a difference, right? It's to be looking in the river and to seeing the color of the river. And by that rationale, I would say that the priority should be 100% working from the mouth of the river and working backwards and just making sure we're staying focused in those areas that do have a good, vibrant fishery, And then that way, as projects are getting funded through grants and things like that, you can actually see, and there's more people surrounding that area too. So as far as whoever is going to be using this data to make their assessments, they can say, well, we're working from the biggest part back to the smallest. That was just my 2 cents. Leave it with you there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just chime in to say that it's appreciated to hear, um, what people's thoughts are in the TAC here, because I think there's not, um, you know, there's several different ways to do it, so it's good to have the feedback. So, um, I think Randy, your hand was up next, and then Linda, we see there.
Yeah, just to add to kind of Carrie's point here, I mean, although it is true, the largest impacts may be in those kind of lower watershed areas. However, in terms of generally speaking, when conducting assessments, you're usually doing it kind of from top to bottom because you're tracking those pathways of sediment, you're tracking the water courses from top to bottom to really be able to denote exactly where the sources are as a track from top to bottom. You don't start at the bottom and work your way up. That just doesn't work in terms of an assessment. So I just wanted to add that point.
Yeah, just to add on to this conversation, I think I just again had just a really quick moment to review Anna's slides that she shared. But I think just curious if there's I think this is important. Yeah, not to recreate the wheel. It would have been good to know about this work from DOC earlier. Obviously, we didn't. I don't think we're aware of that so much. What I thought was interesting, a couple of points about her slides was, and I don't know if there's an additional way to look at this, but she sort of takes that analysis where fish have been found, the coho in particular, the fisheries, but and then overlays with that canopy cover. So I thought that was an interesting piece. And then the landslide piece as well, and understanding in the differentiation. And that's my own limitation on maybe knowledge about roads and assessments. And what I just again briefly looked at that the landslide potential seemed like it was less focus on that, and maybe Randy, you can help me out here. How do the landslides fit into the prioritization? It seemed like because there's only so much you can do on those areas. Is that part of it? Maybe I'm misunderstanding. And the other thing I would just real quick add is that the way to address some of those sediment issues in the lower part of the watershed is going to be more, from my perspective, the other part to this whole planning process, which is not included, but is large wood, and in doing large wood in that lower part of the watershed by close to the mouth and the main stem and all those lower sections will help sort those sediments in a way that will help the fish. Maybe, but addressing the sediment delivery from upstream, I agree, is just kind of how you make sense to work.
Yeah, and the one thing I think I'll throw in there from what I'm hearing about just canopy cover and downstream stuff is that really what we're focused on is what we can do related to road work. So it's identifying roads specifically and the sediment sources that are coming specifically from roads. And obviously there's a lot of latent sediment from past historic uses, and there's a lot of great ideas about what we can do to improve water quality and habitat. But just focusing, I think, on how do we approach identifying which roads would receive an assessment given a limited funds availability, like how would we prioritize where we would do road assessments in one area over another. So and just to recap little history, at one time we were looking at trying to identify all the known roads in the watershed and identifying a prioritization metric for that. We've since switched to a sub-watershed level prioritization scheme. And used this God, Colin, you got to help me. What's the name of the flow model?
Accumulation.
Yeah, so it's like flow accumulation. Is that what it is? So taking in a lot of these factors, so things like slope stability are in that model, and it's just one piece that's rolled up into what admittedly I would say is not like having it all called a P factor or an R factor is not helpful for like visualizing what that data was coming into. But I don't know if Colin, you want to go over one more time, maybe what all of those little factors were that rolled up into
Yeah,
that,
sure. Let me share my
because
screen.
just having it say, a variable, it's easy to forget. I think that like a lot of these things were rolled up into that.
Yeah, so
But
like
this is good information in something that I would be considerate of if we have the possibility to amend something. I think it wouldn't be that far off if we have a known historic range for coho as opposed to steelhead, if we can add that. And it looks like Anthony is here, which is great. This is the man of the hour. So please go ahead, Anthony. I don't know if you're trying to talk, but you'll need to unmute yourself. And that's assuming that Patty has granted you the ability to unmute yourself.
I did. Anthony, you should be able to speak now.
Thank you. Um, well, hi everybody. It's been a while. My apologies. I was listening to some of your conversation, and I understand you're using historic, but I would jump in here and use TEK. And our TEK tells us through our traditional knowledge of the tribe that there was coho salmon pretty much in all the tributaries as well as steelhead. And then, further down the Gualala roach. And in our history of talking about this, there was a lot of coho salmon. And that was one of our main food sources because it had less bones and it was a little bit better as well. So I know you're saying historical and I get that, but throughout the knowledge of the tribe, yes, coho salmon was very present there. It was in pretty much a lot of different little creeks as well. And according to our elder Otis Parrish, we prefer that over steelhead any day. And I know you're looking for a historical sense, but in a TEK sense, we can prove that if you needed us to. And I just wanted to say that.
Yeah,
That was
well,
actually something we had brought up in a previous meeting. I don't know whether or not we were able to connect with you, but I would be very interested in hearing from you in terms of like what our current modeling is looking like from a prioritization standpoint. And one of the issues that has come up has been related to um, what this modeling shows in terms of overlap between coho range in the watershed and the steelhead range in the watershed. And so if there's something in particular that you are aware of in terms of high quality coho habitat historically, like through your tribal knowledge, I'd be very interested in trying to figure out how we might incorporate um, some of that knowledge into our ranking criteria, because there are limitations to some of our existing data sets here.
All right, I'll see what I can get for you, Jason. Just give me a couple more days and I'll see if I can send you something. And I still owe you something as well. Jessica's been out, but as soon as she comes back in, I'll make sure she emails this to you.
And does that, so Colin, I don't know if it would be helpful to show your map one more time,
Yeah.
or if we just want to reach out directly here for Anthony. I know he's a busy guy, so
Thank you.
getting the time to be able to really show this, and I think all that I'm really asking for here is a sniff test. Like, does what we have going on look like it makes sense, or is there something that's really off? And so, Colin, I know I don't want to spend too much time. We do want to have some time to talk about the methodology, but I don't know if you could do a lightning round of how we got a model that looks like this, and listing off some of the inputs for what makes this.
Sure. Yeah. Um, so the lines here, these streamlines. So these blue lines, this is what's called the intrinsic potential model, which, again, it was something that was created as part of the coho recovery planning efforts. So this is kind of like, um, I guess we'll call it historical distribution. And so yeah, blue is coho, and then here this kind of more pink color is steelhead. So basically, what the kind of modeling of historic habitat says is that steelhead could go a little bit higher up into the tributaries than coho, but that there's really distribution throughout the entire watershed. And so I guess, just to kind of highlight that if we use a um, known distribution or observed distribution at some point in time, it would kind of constrain those ranges much closer to the mouth, like one of the maps that Anna was showing, which would probably pull down the ranking of these upper watershed subbasins, and highlight the or increase the ranking or the score of these lower and mid watershed subbasins.
And so the blue area is for coho, and it's modeled based on physical characteristics and where they anticipate that physically coho would be able to access. And the assumption being that little pink or purple, whatever that color is, area that extends beyond that is the physical limitation of where steelhead would go. So, in a sense, Anthony, this model is looking at all of the watersheds in sort of agreement with what your when you were stating that coho were found throughout the watershed. So I just want to throw that out there. Hear your thoughts on it. Get the sniff test. Does this seem like a reasonable thing to be thinking that one day in a perfect world, coho would be back in these places, or is there somewhere in the watershed that you're like, no, we never, that wasn't the spot, or this was the spot, or that's the sort of thing I guess I'm hoping to get as a high level fisheries knowledge.
That is pretty close. I would say it might be a little bit more, I don't want to use the word better, but better than ours. That's pretty good. I would say 90% very accurate. Yes.
So just hearing that, and then also, thinking about the limitations of historic data in the area, my thought is to stick with the modeling that we have right now, which is looking really more at a physical limitation of where coho may be able to, with restoration, come back. And I know that doesn't give us as refined of a like, oh, this watershed over that watershed, because the steelhead and coho lines overlap pretty significantly in our modeling. But maybe that's what we need. Are there any strong thoughts from the TAC here on yes, no, maybe so? And Anthony, thank you for your input on that. I think that this was very timely. I'm happy that you were able to show up.
Thank you guys for hearing us. We appreciate it.
I think that given Anthony's input, that using this expanded map as the kind of the potential habitat for salmon is a good choice and a good decision point, as opposed to using the more restricted map. So that's what I take away from it. Happy to hear what other TAC members think. Also, I would still say that that historical analysis is something that we can build on top of without adding too much work for you guys. Without maybe it will be less work to think about it. So we can talk about it offline about that old mapping work, because it already highlights some of the prioritization and how they came to it. And maybe we need to just try to update it with new roads layers maybe. And so we can talk about that offline. Yeah. In the interest of time.
If I may, real quick, just jump in. I think it is interesting to see from some of the maps from that historical data that Anna shared that and whatever is that the wheat field rate. I'm not sure what the names of the watershed are on this map. So that area there is not prioritized in the other maps. So I'm just curious what is changed, what's different, and would be interesting to hear from Anthony if this is that in particular. That region seems different from some of that analysis that was done in the early
Well, I'll just
2000s.
say that like we use different methods to analyze. So the big weight in this is that flow accumulation model, in the inputs that are in that flow accumulation model, which include overall slope and erodibility. And Colin can certainly help me on all of the factors.
So the kind of quick rundown of them is P is a land cover, K is a soil erodibility factor, LS is length and slope. So it's kind of like how steep is a hillside and how long is that slope. And then C is vegetation cover, which we got from NDVI and a 2025 satellite image. And then R is the rainfall erosivity factor, which is more or less how much does it rain there. So that's a really quick rundown, but that's kind of those are all the factors that are, kind of rolled up into this Russell score.
Just to add to that, Colin, the landslide. So, for example, if you weight this differently, Linda, you would get like slightly different results, and we still don't know the sensitivity of the model, as far as I know, to the different weighting. But for example, in that map that Anna found, which we are referring to, the erosion potential in those areas is a little higher, and the landslide potential. So the landslides weigh more heavily in that other map from the DOC. And I think the landslides, I forgot what the weighting was in this particular rendition. Colin, was it high
I think
or low?
it was a two. So, the Russell
right.
score was a 5 and landslide potential was a 2.
Yeah, so the terrain factors in this model, correct me if I'm wrong, Colin, are what are coloring the watersheds. Those are the factors that Colin mentioned, and the landslide potential is not weighted high. So that might explain some of those differences. Whereas in the DOC map, the landslide and proximity to stream reaches and roads is very heavily weighted. So that might explain some of it.
Thank you.
So with just a little over 15 minutes left, I'm kind of thinking we should try to transition to a quick discussion on the methodology report. Just to give a brief timeline adjustment for everybody. The drafts for both this prioritization assessment and also the evaluation methodology are due on June 8th. So a week, basically. So just to throw that out there. But Genevieve has been looking over the draft evaluation methodology and can talk a little bit more about that.
This
Sure.
was scheduled for an hour and a half, but
Oh, did I mess that up? I must
but
have.
but whatever. I mean, we don't have to take all that time if we don't need it.
You are correct. I don't know. I thought it was an hour. So we got time. Never mind. No rush.
Jason, did you want to return to the previous discussion or should I hop into the methodology?
Let's leave that up to the TAC. Are there things that we want to continue discussing about the prioritization methodology? Happy to extend that conversation. I just had it in my head that 12 o'clock was a deadline.
Jason, is June 8th the deadline for a draft or the final?
Draft as in we need to send it to the water board, and then the water board is really kind of making like, yep, you met your deliverables. So it should be a pretty final draft, I would say. And then
are you
last
expecting,
week, it's really sort of crossing the T's.
Are you expecting us to comment on the draft before you submit it?
The draft prioritization framework and
no, the write-up,
methodologies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like that. Not everybody you don't have to send in a written. That is not like a requirement of your participation. It could just be this meeting or something comes up. But really, it's like if you're identifying that there's something that we missed, like let us know, and we can still make those edits for the next 5 days. So when there's major changes thrown in at the last second, those are hard to pivot with. But thankfully, I mean, the methodology report we're anticipating is not going to be that complicated. We discussed this last meeting. The direction right now is that we're adopting primarily the methods that were included in the CDFW Part 10 upland. I can't remember the name of the thing.
It's part 10 of the California Salmonid Restoration Manual, and it focuses on upslope erosion. And yeah, just to pivot off of that, essentially the direction that I received from the water board and based on the feedback from the last TAC meeting, it seemed like the most sensible way forward was just to adopt Part 10 almost in its entirety. The only difference is, a short introduction to this project specifically, and the caveat that folks can use comparable methodologies if they did not prefer to use this one. But everything else pretty much remains the same.
So considering that this is supposed to be a program and the recommendations that we're making are going to be for how we are doing this particular project, I don't know whether or not we want to have a conversation in there about that would conflate it with the later requirements the water board is working on for a general road order. I think that it would be better for us to have what is our methodology that we are agreeing to for the work that we're going to be doing, and make it clear that there's what we're doing and then there's what is being worked on for a road work order that may or may not, like at that time, someone may or may not use this methodology for their own road assessment. But this is not, we're not making a determination or a recommendation to the water board about how other people are supposed to do an assessment. Randy, your hand is up.
Yeah, I mean, you more or less clarified what I wanted to just confirm is that, yeah, the methodology that we're working on here is specifically to do with the water board funded assessments and not to do with anything that may come out of the order in the future. And the order that may come out in the future will likely have alternative methodologies, you know, of a similar nature that could be utilized by landowners that are not going to be utilizing this funded program.
Just to add context, that caveat was included as a request from Maggie, and from her, I forget who asked her to have that included. But if it's comfortable, I can keep that note in, and the TAC can comment on that. And we can discuss a little further before we finalize the report.
Yeah, I think we'll have a chance to review that also. So I wasn't that worried about it. I just wanted to clarify here verbally to the TAC.
Thank you.
So I'm not hearing anybody hopping in there to need more information on the prioritization framework. If I'm wrong, this is your time to jump in, but might just pivot here to the methodology report, show what you got going on, and maybe possibly end this meeting earlier than an hour and a half. So Genevieve, take it away.
Yeah, let me share my screen here. All right. So very basically, yeah, it's almost verbatim part 10 of that habitat restoration manual. And like I said, the only real difference is probably this section, the introduction, and talks a little bit about the purpose of our report, coordination with the TAC, scope and limitations, which I had initially edited based on our specific project, but was advised to leave what had been in the original report. So this, yeah, almost looks identical to part 10, which is available here as well. And this also does include all of the data sheets that we would be required for the field work, in addition to the calculations that would be used at each point. So I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't know if it would be helpful to go through this in a little bit more detail, but I'm certain that most folks are familiar with this, and it probably doesn't come as a surprise that this would be the most suitable methodology for this project.
Just to, I guess, add a little reminder, I know we talked about it last time, but one of the desires of this program is to have these assessments that are created in a way that funding could later be identified through a grant program, and that the information gathered here would be usable for the justification when you're applying for funding in terms of a potential sediment load reduction. The biggest program that might be available for that kind of funding is the FRGP program through California Fish and Game. So through that FRGP program, they specifically call out this, which makes sense. It's a CDFW protocol as what they would like to be used for that purpose. So it makes a lot of sense for us to, especially if we are paying for the people to do the work, to use this method. And I know that there were concerns about, who would be able to do the work identified in this plan, which I think makes a lot of sense if you're thinking about it in terms of a regulatory context. But I think the fact that we're paying for these assessments to happen at no cost to a landowner, I don't know whether or not that's as much of an issue for our purposes. And so really just making sure that under that purpose section that you've got here, that we're identifying and talking about, how this is something that's being used through our program, which it looks like paragraph 3 identifies that. So I think if it hasn't been made available already to the TAC to read this in full, we should be sending this out this week, so that anyone can have comments. And because that's probably going to be a way better way of doing this than trying to like zoom around a massive Word document.
And we can
But
share it as a Google Doc as well, so folks can directly comment on it.
only concern with that is that almost every time I've ever taken a Word document and put it into a Google document, your formatting gets blown up. So if you do that, my recommendation is to also link a PDF version of your current document so that people can see what the current formatting and what everything is looking like. And when they're making edits and suggestions in the Google document, just know that you're translating whatever was said in Google to a Word document, or else your formatting is going to get blown up. And then you have to spend hours fixing all your pictures and stuff.
Gotcha. Okay, we'll figure out how we'll share it.
Yeah, but we should share that like today, I would say. Okay. So Vishal's linking Anna's slides for Anthony's benefit there. That'd be good. Questions, comments, concerns?
Will you be able, I know you'll share this methodology out, but will you be able to share sort of where the final ranking, was that all included, the final rankings and the mapping and all of that before in the coming days too, once you have a chance to connect with Anthony? Where like where it ends up?
sharing the updates or whatever comes of conversations for updating the prioritization framework. Yeah, I mean, I think if any changes are made, we should definitely be sharing that. I'm not anticipating large changes to be made at this point. I think it's worth looking over what Anna's shared and seeing some of the data that, from a previous prioritization, which, these are the sort of things that it would have been nice to know about,
Surprise, surprise. What the heck?
a couple months ago.
Yeah.
But just given the time frame limitations and everything, what I think would have been feasible would have been to, if there was a historic record, these are where we know we've seen coho in the past, like, okay, maybe we prioritize those. But honestly, hearing from Anthony about maybe a little longer time scale, it seems like there's potential for habitat. And again, just remembering that at today, right now, everything is a potential habitat restoration for coho. They aren't like, it's not like there's a thriving fishery going on that we can be protecting. It's all about improving the watershed for the fishery. So if it's possible to improve the fishery for coho on a much larger scale, then I don't know if there's that much benefit to where people were identifying coho in the 60s being the prioritization. But
Jason,
Colin, what did you just throw in there?
yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Maybe I missed that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just sharing some suggestions on ways to share the document, but we can connect on it offline.
Okay.
Jason, I just wanted to make one suggestion. Maybe it's just too simplistic and you're
Yeah.
already going to do it, is that when you come out with the document, right, with the prioritization, I'm just following up on Linda's comment here. You could at least leave in place a qualitative statement saying that we will also, as we make a final selection, we will also refer to previous work. For example, this DOC report. Like leave yourself the flexibility of using it in actual practical terms as the work comes to fruition. Just like something simple that says we will also review the past work like this DOC map. So that you're not like kind of setting yourself in stone to saying, okay, we can only look at these subwatersheds based on our.
I don't think that the prioritization metric precludes us from looking anywhere.
Okay, cool.
That the idea is if you have two projects and only a budget large enough for one of them, how would we prioritize one project over the next? It's not about, hey, that's a low scoring watershed, we can't do an assessment.
Okay.
It's assuming we have enough interest that we are going to expend funds, like beyond, or exhaust funds is a better word, right? Like, how would we prioritize projects given a limited funding pool? That's, I think, the spirit of the prioritization, but in no way is that supposed to preclude one area from another because it scored lower than another area. If we don't have enough people that want to sign up for this, we'll ultimately do assessments for everybody who applies.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
That's helpful.
Yeah, and can I add some additional info to that? Jason, you mentioned it before. I mean, the estimates are also that, there's enough funding available to do, at least the bottom 20 plus landowners, in their entirety. And then, some portion of funding available to do, the top 4 also. So there's a lot of money available to cover a good fraction or portion of the watershed.
Randy, so I've received comments about that sort of thing being confusing in the past. So when you say the bottom 20, can you please clarify what do you mean by bottom 20? Are you saying out of the largest 30 landowners or out of the 25-ish 1,000+ acre landowners that you anticipate that there would be funds for the not top 5, but 5, 6 through 20 landowners in the watershed that are over 1,000 acres? Like, I would say clarify that statement if you can, so we're very clear about who we think and where we think that there are funds for.
Yeah, sorry, wasn't clear in the first place. But yeah, right now there are, this a certain number of landowners in the watershed. There's, I think, approximately 27 potential landowners that, basically include about 75% of the watershed area. And of that, there's enough funding to cover, a significant portion of the, let's say the lower 20 plus landowners out of potentially 27 landowners. And again, these numbers are not nothing until an order is drafted. I can't say that those are the exact, number of landowners that may be subject to this, but there's still, is a significant amount of funding available to do assessments on, a significant portion of the watershed, regardless of how many landowners are ultimately involved in the order.
As a follow-up question, because I wasn't there for calculating this or thinking about this, was there consideration also to let's imagine, so 70% of the watershed is covered by the largest 27 landowners, but what about the remaining 30%? Like, do you think if we received significant support from the small landowners that collectively make up the additional 30%. Like, what if we did all of that? Would we still have enough funding, or was that not part of the calculation there? Were we really only looking at, okay, we've got however many millions of dollars to do the assessments? We're looking at landowners over that 1,000-acre threshold that are the 27, and we think we can do 20.
Yeah, good question. I think that the primary consideration here is that if there's going to be an order that will require landowners to assess the properties, that this funding would go directly to them, to limit the burden, financial burden to that. If there's additional monies that are left over beyond that, and there's a way to provide that to smaller landowners, I think that there may be an opportunity to that, but I can't really answer that, say yes, that would be the case at this point in time.
Just thinking about in terms of prioritization and how these programs roll out, that does actually bring a question to my mind in terms of, let's say we roll this thing out next month and we got, 5 landowners that are over that 1,000-acre threshold, but we also have a road association that's interested in getting their road assessed that's in the watershed, and it's consisting of a number of small 40-acre parcels, and they want that road assessment done, and they ranked and they're ready to go. Like, I'm assuming that we would work with that road association and 40-acre parcels. And so that's something that I think that we need to be clear on from the beginning, so that we don't have a situation where we're like, oh no, we're holding on to funds for an unclear group of people. Like, and I'd love to see road associations going to some of these or road assessments going to some of these ranchette subdivisions. I think that would be really positive, because they are the least likely to be able to come up with the money to do something like this in the future.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that wholeheartedly. But again, if there are going to be certain landowners that are subject to the order, then we wanted to, be sure that the money primarily starts with them as the first priority to where that money goes, because of the burden that's placed on them. If there are 40-acre parcels or those other parcels that aren't necessarily subject to the order, then that financial burden to conduct those assessments is not there. So, but on the same standpoint, as you're talking about, there's a rural subdivision that, is composed of numerous, smaller parcels. I mean, ideally, those areas would be assessed also. But again, I can't say that this funding package at this point in time would be available to do that.
All right.
Consideration, sorry, jumping in here, but in consideration of that, some of there's in your survey form, or say from the landowners, there's have their roads been assessed before, right? So, or treated. So that's sort of a number one place to check box. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's a good reference to our landowner outreach is basically that we don't really want to be doing, I would think, like recreating completed assessments. But
and maybe just to add to that, maybe it has to do with when that assessment was done and treatments, because over time, if it was 20 years ago, it might be time to revisit.
Yeah, that's another good point. Yeah, just thinking about the rollout of this, and eventually there's going to be, I mean, as all things, eventually you're going to run out of money, and I think that we need to be structuring how we're doing our assessments in a way that gives enough time for late adopters to join in, right? And so not spending all the money up front, but at the same time, you kind of have to go with early adopters to get the program running. So I'd be interested in having more conversations about, you know, presuming that there are roads that a smaller landowner applies for. I would like to see us doing road assessments on those early adopters with consideration to folks that are later going to come to us. But worst thing we could do is not work with those landowners and then not get enough people that want to do road assessments, and so we end up not spending the money down. I would think, like, we want assessments getting done. But Mark, you're unmuted.
Yeah, I guess one slight point of concern, and this obviously threads the needle between the TAC and the regulatory program, as always, but is if a landowner has this assessment done, that data goes to water quality, which is fine and good. And I appreciate the desire to get small landowners done on road assessments. I really do. But do we run the risk of incidentally enrolling landowners in this program, particularly once enrollment fees and all of that rolls out? And sort of what's the hazard there would need to be considered, just as far as at least having the landowner be informed that, hey, if you do this, you might now be part of this program, given that item B with roads with sediment potential, whatever the phrasing is on that. And that would be my one concern with using funds outside of the 1,000-acre scope.
Yep, that's a good point. Great consideration, and I don't know if we're going to know the answer to that, but I think it certainly is something that people should be aware of when we're signing contracts or getting involved in any of this stuff, is that there is an ongoing development for an order that affects, the watershed. So, like, people should be aware of that. But as to who that order is going to affect or how that's going to come into play, none of that is legally settled today. And it may be some time before we know the answer to that. So Linda asked, how much time do we have to conduct the assessments? I believe that we have the ability to extend our contract to a 5-year contract, and we started the contract a year ago, so that would be 4 more years.
If I may jump in, something you just said about, see if I can capture my thought there. A question. Sorry. I lost it all. It'll come back. Sorry.
Well, I'm sure it had something to do with just like the status of the order and making sure that people who are working with us are clear about, what they're signing up for and in the context.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
The order. So that brings me back to our methodology, right? And it's not linked to the order. Anyway, I'm a little confused on the order and what somehow a little bit that how does the order fit in here? And I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Let me try to hop in here. So the road assessment methodology is specifically to how we are supposed to be delivering funds. So we've got, I'm going to be wrong here, but $3.5 million ish to do on the ground road assessments. And that is a limited amount of funding. There's, however many million acres in the watershed. And so, like, that's not going to cover it all. So the prioritization methodology is for us to be able to, given 2 projects side by side, and we're running out of money, which project are we going to do? That's my understanding for the prioritization. And so how is that separate from a developing road order? The road order is going to affect what the road order affects, and that needs to be approved not only by the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, but also by the State Water Quality Control Board. So there's a process that is a legal process eventually that's going to happen, or I guess that's just a regulatory, not a legal process, right? So, but like that has not happened. So we can't speak in definites about who is being affected by the order because it is in development.
Can I speak to an update on that? And
Yeah, please.
I think notification has gone out, but and sometime in July, it looks like there's a draft order coming out, and there's going to be a public hearing or a public workshop in front of the board. And I don't have the date here in front of me, but I think it's mid to late July. So there'll be a month-long time frame in which the draft comes out, and that public workshop with the North Coast Water Board will be happening during that time frame. So it's coming out, just for that update.
And
that's helpful info.
Yes, it is. Sorry, I guess my question is there was a lot of concern over the methodology we're choosing and that it wouldn't be part of the order. So, so that's where I guess I'm not, it's not guaranteeing that if we're using that, is it chapter 10 or whatever we're saying out of the manual, that relying on our methodology, but I've heard reiterating that that is not necessarily what's going to be adopted in the order. So I guess I'm just trying to reconcile what it will.
Yeah. So again,
yeah.
we're developing, we're providing a service, right? And we have a group of technical experts that are meeting to help us determine, how to use those funds or what is appropriate to be using those funds for. So the methodology that we are going to use is what we are deciding that that's the type of assessment that we're going to do when we're providing funds. The future order related to requiring an assessment is going to have different parameters that have not, that we don't have any direct control over how we're going to set up, what would be required of a landowner in the future in terms of the type of assessment that is done. So I am pretty darn sure that this methodology will be applicable. It's the Part 10 methodology. It's the, I'm going to give you a 99% that this type of assessment is going to be adequate for whatever they end up settling on for a future road order. But what I will say is that there's still flexibility in terms of what will actually be required, and that has not been adopted by the State Water Board. So it is not currently today an enforceable order. But there will be a long series of meetings about that sort of thing. We're part of our contract is that we're going to continue to help put on some workshops for people to learn more about developments with the TMDL. We're also going to be putting on workshops for landowners for best management practices related to road and sediment savings. And that'll be something moving on in the next year or so. But we'll be doing that. So hopefully that helps and sort of creates the box that we're putting ourselves in here. We're really trying to focus on what can we control, and what we control is how we're providing a service to some of these landowners by providing road assessments. So anywho, that's all that I've got. Glad that was helpful. And if there are no thoughts, comments, or concerns, I'd say we can wrap this meeting up. Hearing none, I don't have a gavel, but if I did, this is where I'd hit it. We can conclude today's meeting and go get lunch.
So one last quick question. Sorry, I stopped the gavel.
Sure.
So you're
sure.
You'll be sending out these drafts to us, right? The TAC.
Yeah,
soon,
TAC.
sooner than later, to be able to review and provide comment back to you ASAP, right?
Yes. yeah, I would say that the methodology should go out today for sure. The prioritization, I think we should look over what Anna sent and see if there's any way that we think that we can incorporate that information. And then I would just say that, earlier than later, we should send that back out with either some kind of reasoning as to whether or not we incorporated what Anna had to say.
And Anthony.
Or
and
if we didn't, due to feasibility, timing, Anthony's comments, etc.
Hey, Jason,
Yes.
I just sent you email with some of the stuff I had from one of the books that was written on or written, excuse me, on the Gualala River. So I sent that to you so you have it, and if you want to share it with the rest of the group, I don't mind at all.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, guys. I'm out of here. Have a good
Thank you.
All right, Anthony and everybody.
Yeah,
Have a great
thanks,
day.